look, a lot of us are going to face this, right? Our parents get older, they start needing more help, and suddenly you're in this new role. It's a really personal, emotional thing, but let's be honest, it also brings up some huge and kind of stressful financial questions. So we're gonna dive right into that and break down how you might actually get paid for doing this incredibly important work. So the big question, is it even possible? And yeah, the short answer is yes, it absolutely is. But, and this is a big but, the road to getting there is, let's just say, not exactly a straight line. It's filled with very specific rules, a ton of fine print, and systems you really have to understand. And that's exactly what we're gonna unpack right now, the real-world pathways to getting compensated. All right, here's how we're gonna break this down. First, we'll get a handle on the sheer scale of the financial challenge. Then, we'll explore the two main ways to get some financial help, direct paychecks and tax credits. After that, we are going to hit the single most important piece of the puzzle, and we'll wrap it all up with a clear, straightforward action plan for you. Okay, first things first, let's talk about the size of this issue. Because honestly, it's way bigger than most people realize. The need for elder care isn't some far-off possibility. For most families, it's a statistical certainty. But there's this massive, almost invisible gap between who's gonna need care and who can actually pay for it the old-fashioned way, with insurance. And this right here, this chart tells a pretty shocking story. Think about these numbers. We know that a huge majority, 70% of older adults will eventually need long-term care. But look at how few have private insurance to cover it. We're talking only about 3 or 4%. That enormous gap is where the financial pressure lands, and it usually lands right on the family. Okay, so with that huge gap in mind, how do you actually, bridge it financially? Let's dive into our first major pathway, programs that can give you direct compensation. We're not talking about saving a few bucks on your taxes here. We're talking about getting an actual paycheck for the work you're doing. Essentially, the money can come from two main places, public or private. On one side, you've got Medicaid. That's the government program, and eligibility is all about your parents' financial situation and their medical needs. On the other side, you have private long-term care insurance. For that, it all comes down to the specific contract your parent bought. And here's the absolute key thing to get right away. For both of these, the whole process kicks off with your parents' qualifications, not yours. So how does Medicaid actually let you get paid? Well, it's all about this one key phrase, consumer-directed care. Think of it as a special option inside Medicaid programs. It basically gives the person who needs help, your parent, the power to hire their own caregiver. And in a lot of states, that caregiver can be a family member, like you. This is the mechanism that makes it happen. All right, so if you go through all that and get approved through Medicaid, what are we talking about money-wise? Well, the rate is set by whatever the state has approved for home care. And that usually lands somewhere in the $10 to $20 an hour range. It's often around minimum wage, but hey, if you've had to cut back your hours or even quit your job to be a caregiver, that money can be an absolute lifeline. Now, what if your parent is one of the few who actually has one of these long-term care policies? The rules here are totally different. You've got to dig into the details. The policy has to literally say that family members can be paid. Some go even further and require you to be a licensed caregiver yourself, which means going through a whole certification program. It's a perfect example of why you just cannot make any assumptions. You have to read the actual policy. All right, let's switch gears a bit. We're going to move on to our second pathway, which gives you financial help in a completely different way. Instead of getting a direct payment, the tax code has a couple of credits that can lower the amount of tax you owe. And less tax owed means more money in your pocket at the end of the year. First up, there's something called the credit for other dependents. Think of it as a straightforward $500 credit. But here's the catch. Your parent has to legally qualify as your dependent on your tax return. That means they have to pass certain income and support tests. The key word here is support. This credit is for when you are financially supporting them.
Now this next one gets mixed up with the first one all the time, but it's for a totally different situation. The Child Independent Care Credit is for when you pay someone else, a third party, to look after your parent so that you can go to work. See the difference? This is not for your own labor, it's to help cover the cost of care you have to pay for.
And this table just lays it all out side by side, super simple. The credit for other dependents, that's when your parent depends on you financially. The Child Independent Care Credit, that's when you depend on outside help so you can go to work. Two different problems, two different tax credits. Okay, we've talked about getting paid directly, we've talked about tax credits, but honestly, none of that matters if you don't grasp this next part. This is the single most important factor in this whole thing. And the big secret is, it's not really about you. It's about your parent. So here's the bottom line, especially for the main path of direct payment through Medicaid. Your parent is the one who has to get through the door first. They have to qualify for Medicaid based on their income, their assets, and their medical needs. Only after they're approved and enrolled can they then choose that consumer-directed option to have the funds go to you. The entire process hinges on them. Okay, wow. We have covered a lot of ground, right? We've analyzed the problem, the potential pathways, and the absolute most critical factor. So, what do you actually do with all this information? Let's put it all together into a clear, step-by-step plan you can actually use. Here it is, your 4-step action plan. Step 1, you've got to check your local state rules because Medicaid is different everywhere. Step 2, take a real honest look at your parents' finances and health to see if they might even be eligible. Step 3, find any and all insurance policies and read every single word, especially the fine print. And finally, Step 4, because this stuff is genuinely complicated, really consider talking to a pro, like an elder care coordinator, to help you navigate all of it. You know, we've spent this whole time breaking down the nuts and bolts of getting paid. But as we wrap up, it kind of points to a much bigger question, doesn't it? When you think back to that massive care gap we saw at the beginning, it becomes crystal clear that the unpaid work of family caregivers is this huge, invisible pillar holding up our entire healthcare system. Realizing that, well, it puts the personal search for a paycheck into a much, much bigger perspective.